Okay, so we know that iOS 18 is possibly going to be the biggest update in iPhone history. And that's mostly because of AI. I've talked about Apple's AI in multiple videos before, and how Apple's looking at integrating AI into not just the OS in general, but their first-party apps as well. And ever since our previous iOS 18 video from back in March, a ton of new details have emerged. So here are 6 new iOS 18 details. And before that, we're giving away an iPhone 15. Simply submit a wallpaper spec idea on our new Discord for a chance to win. And you can do this via our Google form right here on our competition's announcements channel. Simply submit an image or a sketch of what your suggested pack is, alongside a description and a name. The best idea gets an iPhone 15 as well as your suggested pack made, plus a 1 year of full access for wallpapers. So good luck to everyone. And now, back to the iOS 18 features. And I want to start off with the biggest one by far, which is Siri. We all know that Apple plans on completely revamping Siri with iOS 18. More specifically, Apple has been looking into LLMs. They've been developing their own called MM1, and they've also been looking at partnering with Google using their Gemini LLM for this new version of Siri. But up until now, we didn't really know for sure which route Apple was going to take. Well, now we do. According to Mark Gurman, Apple has now completely rolled out using their own in-house AI for Siri. Instead, Apple will definitely be outsourcing all of Siri's improvements to either Google or OpenAI. And I'm quite disappointed to hear this. Siri was literally the very first mainstream smart device assistant. And even though Apple has abandoned Siri for years, and everyone else has seriously overtaken Apple here, pun intended, I was hoping that Apple's recent push into developing their own AI tools would completely revamp Siri. Not just to make Apple finally be more competitive in this AI space, but also to make Siri the most advanced assistant on a phone today. And while Siri is getting a lot of improvements this year, all of those would not be thanks to Apple, but instead thanks to third parties like Google and OpenAI. From everything that we've seen so far, it does look like Apple's partner is going to be Google here. Plus, they've already established a partnership for Google Search when the original iPhone launched, which means that Siri will only ever be as advanced as Google's own Gemini is, which in turn means that Google could always prioritize Gemini on Android more, therefore leaving Siri permanently behind. Now, it is also worth mentioning that on Android right now, Google Assistant is not powered by Gemini at all, which is a completely separate app. This could be because Google Assistant is linked with a ton of different services like Android Auto, the Google Home app, your contacts, your photos, and so on, whereas Gemini is simply just a large language model that's very good at conversations. So I do think that at some point, Gemini will be integrated into Google Assistant, and when that happens, that's when we'll have this truly powerful AI that can do anything from answering your questions to taking control of your apps and services and helping you in your everyday tasks. So the real question is this version of Siri going to have this strong OS integration, or is it simply going to be the current Siri that we have right now with just an AI chatbot on top of it? Well, to answer this question, we need to take a look at Apple's Ferret UI. Apple has just published a paper on their Ferret UI, which is an MLLM, or a multi-modal large language model that combines different LLMs with different purposes into one. In this case, Apple's Ferret UI is able to understand what is being displayed on your screen, and then you can ask it specific questions or ask it to do specific actions based on that. Some examples listed in this paper are asking how to open up specific apps, or how to navigate to games, or if a certain app is suitable for a 15-year-old. Now, this is obviously game-changing for users with vision impairments, but I also think that this could be a game changer for everyone else too. For example, whenever we post a social for Apple wallpapers, I write that in my Notes app on my MacBook, which I then copy and paste to my iPhone, which I then manually share on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram. With Ferret UI, I could just have the wallpaper spec on the screen, then ask it to write a description for it, which I then modify to my own liking, and then I can simply ask it to share that to all social platforms, which it would then do automatically, all at the same time. And this is what I think the future of Siri should be. An incredibly smart assistant that not only talks to you, but also understands what's on your screen, and does exactly what you tell it to do. Kind of like having your own personal human assistant, just way faster. Now, we don't really know if Ferret UI is coming to iOS 18, or if this is something that would come at a later point in time. But if it is part of Apple's new iOS 18 Siri, then Siri might actually be way smarter than just being a Gemini chatbot. Now, aside from all of these big iOS 18 Siri changes, iOS 18 is also said to feature a redesign. We first heard about this back in February, when tech website The Verifier claimed that Apple was working on a visionOS-inspired redesign for iOS 18. Now, this was a bit odd, as visionOS uses a ton of transparent windows, which wouldn't really work on iOS for obvious reasons. However, Mark Gurman has also stated back in February that Apple is actually working on an iOS 18 redesign. And now we know that one of those changes is going to be a brand new home screen, one that will be way more customizable. I briefly touched upon this in our WWDC What to Expect video, and essentially, we would be able to finally position our apps anywhere we want on the home screen. The way this may work in iOS 18 could be Apple giving you these empty widgets of different sizes that we can then place anywhere we want on our home screen, allowing us to configure the layout however we wish. We still won't get the same freedom as on Android, and it also won't be as intuitive, but it will be a vast improvement over Apple's current approach. Then topographic maps are also said to be coming in iOS 18. These were actually introduced in watchOS 10, and I've always found it odd how iOS 17 did not have these at all. Well, they seem to finally be coming. Now, some of you might be wondering, how do these differ from the terrain view that we currently have? Well, topographic maps let us see elevation as well as trails, which are extremely useful for when you're hiking or when you're doing any outdoor sports like mountain biking that do require you to be very familiar with your terrain. So this will be finally built in into the Maps app without the need for a third-party app anymore. And speaking of the Maps app, custom routes are also coming. Google Maps and other Maps apps have already had this for years. Apple Maps has not, but this is finally coming now. And the idea is that you'll be able to select specific routes that you want to take rather than having to stick with the pre-selected options that Apple gives you. As an example, Tideswell is an extra scenic area that I like to go through. Well, in Google Maps, I can choose to go through it. This should now be coming to Apple Maps too with iOS 18. Then another iOS 18 update that's been recently leaked is Safari Browsing Assistant. Now, the idea here is nothing new. Microsoft Edge already has this, and it is powered by GPT-4. So I'm thinking that this will either work like Edge, where you have Siri as your Safari assistant and you can ask Siri for some help or anything that you see on your screen, or it would work like Google's own Circle to Search that we have on Pixels and Samsung phones, where you can just circle whatever you see on your screen right now, and then it's gonna do a Google search for that. But I think that one of the most unexpected iOS 18 leaks is that apparently this initial wave of Apple's AI features will work entirely on device. Now, this was pretty much expected when it comes to Apple's own AI features, but what about Siri, which, as we all know, is now set to be powered by Gemini? And Google's Gemini does come in 3 flavors, by the way: Gemini Nano, Gemini Pro, and Gemini Ultra. But only the Gemini Nano is the one that runs on device, which implies that unless Apple specifically uses Gemini Nano, we might not see any of these big Siri changes at launch. And if we do get the smarter Siri at launch that uses Gemini Nano, yes, it will be a major upgrade over current Siri, but it will still not be as good as ChatGPT-4 or Gemini Pro/Ultra. But yeah, only 2 months until we actually find out what Apple's gonna do, and in the meantime, I would love to hear your thoughts on all of these new iOS 18 leaks. Feel free to continue the conversation on Discord, and also don't forget about that competition and the iPhone 15 giveaway on Discord as well. I'm Daniel, this means ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.